Okay, this first chapter is really kind of a overview of the book. Um, it's going to talk about perspectives that define and shape technology uses, the history of digital technologies, hardware, software resources, impact of four types of issues on technology and education, technology competencies needed by today's teachers, the rationale for why we use technology in education, and some emerging trends. And that's a nice little graphic because we used to use computers only. Now we have all these mobile devices, so that's one of the things going on here. Um, we need to learn key terminology. We need to look at the past to shape the future. In other words, what do we do in the past to get instruction and curriculum across to these kids? Can technology help that? Consider current available resources and how to use them, and then look ahead at the emerging technologies. Um, we have four defining perspectives: media and AV, which is audio visual type stuff, instructional systems and instructional design, vocational training, and computer systems. So we're going to look at those. Um, when we try to integrate educational technology into this bubble, it falls into two categories: educational technology and instructional technology. So we'll talk about those differences here in a minute. A little history is, we had pre-microcomputers in the 50s and the 70s that no one used, particularly in education. Uh, the microcomputers started coming in. They were more personal computers that people would have in their homes, not necessarily the classroom. At the start in the 70s, by the 90s, we started integrating them into the classrooms. Then the internet took full force in the 90s and is still going hard today. And then we have the mobile open access stuff with our phones and tablets and all that stuff we have now. Um, and so technology is no panacea. It's not a magic thing that's going to help everything. We have to figure out how to use technology effectively. We don't want to use technology for technology's sake when we're teaching. It can help us in administrative stuff um, very much. It can help us develop curriculum a lot easier and write curriculum a lot easier, but it's just not a magic thing. Teachers are not developers. In other words, we don't write all the code and all that stuff. Most of us don't. Um, we try to find things that are, easy to work with, easy to do, and that can be done with a little research. Possible, just because we can do something doesn't mean it's desirable. And a lot of times, sometimes it's not feasible, or all these other things, inevitable. We just because we find something doesn't mean it's going to work right. I'm sure you've been through trainings or workshops and stuff where we have this awesome technology, but it's just a bear to work with. It's extremely hard to work with. So um, that's what that's talking about. Technology's changed faster than teachers can keep up. Um, most teachers or curriculum designers or anybody else, um, we're all pretty technologically literate, but something's always coming up, and it's really hard to keep up. Older technologies can be useful. We do this thing called repurposing, and a classic example of that is Microsoft Office. That was made for the business industry, um, but we've used it in education. So we repurpose that software for education. And there are problems with it. For example, um, when an English teacher uses Microsoft Word, and the students write with it, sometimes there can be grammatical errors because the people that used it, or the developers that wrote it, were not linguistic people. They weren't educators. They were business people, and a lot of times the subject verb and all the other stuff that goes in there was not conducive to proper English in an English class or a writing class. So there were those issues. Um, Teachers are the most important thing. Technology is not more important than the teacher, and that has to be understood. Um, the hardware, we have microcomputers, which are the desktop, laptops, network servers, all those things. The handheld, cell phones, tablets, all that stuff. Display technology are the whiteboards, projection units, all those types of things that we have in the classroom. And this stuff's important because you know we have to outfit classrooms with all this stuff. Um, Imaging technologies, cameras and scanners, um, those types of things. And now we have cameras on the phones. We really don't use cameras much anymore because we don't have them all on our phones. The peripherals are the mouse, monitors, keyboards, printers, those types of things. And then the external storage device, which can be internal as well. Hard drive, jump drives, cloud computing, all these types of things. They say there are three types of software applications or apps or anything else, and that can be instructional, productivity, and administrative. Um, so we have definitely things that we can use to help instruct the students, and we're going to do we're going to do a few exercises this semester on that. Productivity software, which is different, that could be considered remedial software or something like that, and some other things that we'll talk about. And then administrative software that we use, like developing Blackboard shells or doing seat assignments or writing units and lesson plans and assessments and evaluations and formative and summative assessments and all these other things that we can do with administrative software. Um, there are a lot of things that impact technology uses: social, cultural, equity, educational, legal, and ethical. And those are stuff that'll be talked about throughout the semester and in this book. Social issues that we have are the privacy concerns. For example, we talked about this a little bit the first day when I was showing you Facebook. Um, a lot of kids don't want to work in an open social setting because of issues they may have with being, picked on or deemed weird or whatever. So we try to do some. That's one of the type of privacy concern. Health-related concerns. I'm not real sure what that could be other than carpal tunnel or eye problems, I guess. Fears about misuses. Again, that kind of leads up to the privacy concerns we were talking about. There can be misuse also, and students looking at websites they shouldn't be, or downloading apps if they have a tablet given to them by the school that they shouldn't be, all that type of stuff. Risk of online behaviors, that could be anything from sexting to online bullying, and then all the malware, viruses, spam, and hacking that could possibly happen. In education, lack of funding is one of the big obstacles. A lot of times we get these things, we see something, someone sends us an email and says, check this out, and we want to get it, but we don't have the funding for it. So That can be a big problem. Uh, Maintenance on already existing computers takes up a lot of money. That could be a big issue as well. The accountability issues with both the teacher and the student. Um, how a teacher runs a class, and are they doing all the things they need to do to get information to the parents, to the students, grades, all these types of things, and then students just doing their work. Um, digital literacy and digital citizenship. Well, I think most people are digitally literate. Now, the digital citizenship is another issue. Um, the kids know how to use all this stuff. Most people know how to use all this stuff. Um, so literacy is not a big problem. Um, Being a good digital citizen can be. Most of the people, it's just like being a regular citizen on the street. You have to follow rules, and sometimes a lot of people don't. So that can be an issue. Um, Debates on best practices. We are always arguing on what the best practices are, and you're going to have a little assignment here that's going to deal with that and get your opinion on it. And then reliance on online learning. Are we relying on it too much in the classroom? Again, we shouldn't use technology for technology's sake. And I'll be harping on that all semester. Um, Culture on equity. There is a digital divide in this country. Not everybody has the things that they need. For example, the last I heard, and the parents at NIMS Middle School down here on Orange only there were like 65% didn't even have a computer at home or internet at home for their children. So there can be a big digital divide. It's starting to get that gap is tightening up a little bit, but we'll talk about that too. Racial and gender equality. Again, it seems like the low income urban districts that are mainly um, African American are the ones that you know are in that divide. So that could be a definite racial inequality. Um, the gender inequality, I'm not really sure about. I'm not seeing a whole lot on that, but that's something we'll look into. And then students with special needs. So, um, although technology can help a lot with that, um, and special needs can be anything from physical and mental disabilities, sight impairment, hearing impairment, uh, the issues of low performing, medium performing, and high performing, gifted and talented students, all these types of things, um, all the way to English as a second language and those types of things. So technology can help with that. We'll talk about that as we go through the semester. Um, Legal and ethical, of course, hacking. Hacking's not a huge issue, but it can be. Kids have hacked into the school's computer systems and given themselves A's and stuff. It's kind of rare, but it does happen. Um, Safety issues, again, the online bullying and those types of things. Kids commit suicide over that stuff. So academic dishonesty, plagiarizing, those types of things, and then illegal downloads and software piracy. Again, that happens a lot. Um, so, those are things we need to look at as we go through technology in our schools. Um, the Common Core standards, I'm not going to key too much on that because, number one, Florida doesn't use Common Core. It has its own. It's a state-run thing. The 50 states, several of them don't use Common Core. But you may go to a state that does, and that may be infused into your curriculum design and into the curriculum and lesson plan, unit plans, all that stuff. ISTE is the International Society of Technology and Education. They have standards. Um, the Partnership for 21st Century Skills, P21 competencies, and the Information Communication Technology Framework. We talk about these things because uh, Leon County, for example, they have to adhere to a lot of these standards. They don't have to adhere to the Common Core standards, but they have to, again, Florida made their own type of Common Core standards, but they have to adhere to those, and they have to adhere to these SD standards and the P21 and the ICT standards in order to get money from the state, which ultimately and from the federal government. The state generates most of its income for schools, um, through taxes and all that stuff. But we don't have state taxes here, so we get a piece of the federal government pie. So we um, we have to show that we are using technology in our classrooms in a competent way. We get assessed. Um, we have all these accreditation type things that we have to deal with in order to get the money. So these can be very relevant. Um, this is the Tech Pack framework. So it's combined technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge that we want to try to get across to the students. Technology, again, is not the be-all, end-all of everything. We have to know the pedagogical knowledge of the art of teaching children, how we manage a classroom, how we go about teaching. We have to know the content area of what we're teaching, math, science, technology, whatever. We also have the technical knowledge to be able to, articulate that if we choose to use technology. And we will ultimately be using some type of technology. Um, we have all kinds of stuff that we can use to do things like portfolios. There's ready-made portfolio software. Um, there's stuff like TaskStream or WebCT. But we can also make portfolios online with something like Prezi or something like that. Converting something into a PDF document, multimedia authoring software, websites, video, all these types of things, blogs, wikis, all these types of things we can use to do portfolios. This just goes into their developmental steps of determining portfolio requirements, what you're going to need, creating a structure or an outline, add and link components that are in there, um, monitor the collection, receive periodic feedback, and then reflect. So we'll talk a lot more about that as we go on. I'm not going to go way deep into this stuff, but I want you to read about it in the book. Developing sound rationale for technology use, the research findings. There's a ton of research, past research, that's out there, and we'll look at some of that. So, but it's limited because it's obsolete already, because technology moves so fast. Um, Initial findings on one-to-one computer initiatives. Um, we'll talk about that, and then the recent research. So you're going to actually do a little review. It's not going to be anything major. It's going to be reflective learning. I want to know what you think. There's no really right or wrong answer. I want your opinion. So I'm a big believer in reflective learning, and we'll use technology to do that. So we'll talk a lot more about research as we go on too. Remember, this is just kind of an overview. We have a lot of problems that we can face as we go through, and how do we motivate and engage students? The shiny package of a lot of this is wore off because now, technology is so ingrained in our society that um, it can be hard to motivate students, even with really cool technology, because they've probably seen most of it before. But you know, hopefully we can do that. How to support the learning needs with technology, how to prepare students for future learning with technology. These are all issues that we'll discuss. Oh boy, let's see. So hardware, software developments, ubiquitous mobile computing that's out there, more open content's out there. MOOCs are free online courses that are offered by a lot of people like Harvard. You can take a free course at Harvard online through this thing called MOOCs that we'll talk about a little bit more. The use of e-textbooks and e-books themselves and tablets are out there. And we'll talk about that too because I have like a pilot thing to look at because the DRS gave all the kids iPads. So we'll talk about how that goes and how that works as we matriculate through the semester. Um, we have all kinds of trends that are out there. Augmented reality systems. We'll look at a thing called Half-Life, or Second Life rather, which is a whole online environment for the kids can go and go to anywhere in the world they want to go to look at things. Um, they can go see the cathedrals in Rome and Pompeii and see the jungles of Borneo and all whatever through this thing. It's really cool. Wearable technologies, things like the virtual reality glasses and all those stuffs that come out. Gaming's huge. Um, Learning analytics, how we can use technology to analyze data, and 3D printing's pretty big nowadays. But I don't consider that emerging because it's been out for a while. Um, but we'll just you're gonna like just do some quick research on some not now, don't worry about it, but you'll do some quick research on emerging trends that's going on out there. It's kind of what this class is all about, isn't it? Um, we're going to look at all types of other um, emerging trends that are out there in the educational applications, flexible learning environments, such as what you're going through right now, kind of hybrid face-to-face versus online, um, flipped classrooms, all kinds of stuff like that, personalized learning through technology, new models and modes for instruction, um, the reliance on distance learning, and, and that's an issue because not everybody wants to take online classes. A lot of people actually hate online classes. They would much rather learn face to face. So there's all kinds of stuff like that too. And then a lot more options for students with disabilities. So this is the what we'll be doing this semester, looking at a lot of this, in addition to how we can um, equate this to the curriculum, because all these things need to be talked about when you're designing curriculum. So that's it for now, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.